So what we're here to talk about today is a little bit about generational differences in the workplace. Now, this has been a big buzz term of many years, for the recent years, talking about multi-generations in the workplace. Why are we hearing about this all of a sudden? Why isn't it something we've heard about for years and years and years? Well, the answer is actually simple. Years ago, there weren't multiple generations in the workplace. The modern workplace, as we know it, started roughly in the 1940s. And initially there were folks of that generation, namely our veterans, and the people that came behind them, or baby boomers. When Generation X did come into the workplace, they're a very, very small cohort, vastly outnumbered by baby boomers and veterans. And because baby boomers just accepted the office for the way the veterans set it up, there wasn't a lot of push for change. Generation X wasn't big enough to push for change. But now, because of timings, we've seen the veterans mostly retire. We've seen the baby boomers step into the more senior roles. Generation X progress to middle management, and Generation Y come in behind them. Generation Y is a huge, huge cohort, actually much larger than the baby boomers. So now there's real pressure that we have to change. And each of these generations work differently. Moreover, our workplace is actually designed for the veterans. So unless you're in your 90s, your workplace doesn't meet your needs. There's changes that you need to see to meet your personal needs so that your professional needs can grow. What we're going to do today is talk about what some of those needs are of each of the four generations. We are going to talk about veterans so we can understand what their needs were and why they designed the workplace the way they did. We'll talk about the needs of the baby boomers, Generation X, and Generation Y. We'll also talk about Generation Z, or digital natives, the next generation currently still in school, so you can think about some of the changes that will be coming to your workplace and what it is you can do to make sure that there's no conflict with all the generations. So what we have is we have a generation of veterans. And for the veterans, yes, the international political life was very, very difficult. They saw some horrific times globally. They had to deal with the Depression. They had to deal with World War II. I mean, these were not fantastic times. But from solely a workplace perspective, they really did experience a chance of opportunity. For them, if you worked hard, you would get noticed. You would advance. Because they came into the workplace at a time when workplaces themselves were thriving, were growing. It was that initial startup of when you start it, people come back, the end of the war, there was lots of money, lots of opportunity, and lots of growth. So they really had hard work ethic and really believed if you work for it, you will achieve it. And so they passed that work ethic on to baby boomers. And baby boomers came in and they worked really hard. Now, baby boomers were challenged because of the size of the cohort. There were so many of them that if they wanted to get noticed, they had to stand out. And to stand out, they came to work early. They were there before the boss and they stayed there after the boss. In fact, baby boomers we all owe a huge debt of gratitude to since they invented the workaholic. So these baby boomers came in and they gave their whole lives to the company. They worked hard. And now, as they're aging, they're coming towards retirement, and they're not really sure what to do. They've given so much to the company. What do they do now? And we'll talk about some of the challenges that face. But moreover, the baby boomers are the ones that raised Generation X. Generation X came into the workplace at a really, really poor time because all of the jobs had just been taken by this huge cohort of baby boomers. And Generation X is there kind of stuck in a waiting pattern, waiting for the baby boomer generation ahead of them to retire. And that generation is still in the workplace. So baby boomers have been stuck in this holding pattern. Now, Generation X has been stuck in this holding pattern. What's interesting about Generation X is because they were raised by baby boomers, they were raised by workaholics. Their parents weren't around a lot. It made them very independent. They came home after school and let themselves in. They made their own snacks after. They were often the children of divorce, and a lot of those household stresses were because of the hours their parents were working. So they have some very unique needs that we'll also talk about later in this presentation. In between, so you have your baby boomers at the top, very, very large cohort, small cohort of Generation X, and then a cohort of Generation Y. Generation Y is a huge, huge cohort. As I mentioned, bigger than the baby boomers. they're still entering the workplace because this is going to be the most educated generation we've ever had in the workplace. A lot of this generation has post-secondary education, if not graduate education. And their needs are very, very, very dramatically different from those of the baby boomers. And it's really the collision of these two cultures that's causing a lot of the conflict that we see in today's workforce.